Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the annual bourbon episode. So before anybody asks, yes, hand is bandaged. I just had surgery. You've been to a class in the past really 2 years. You probably heard me talk about it, discussing taking care of yourself, which if I'd go back in time, I definitely would have. Shooting is repetitive motion, and it can cause injury, strain, and otherwise damage to, the things you need to shoot the gun effectively. So I had carpal and cubital tunnel surgery for corrective action. Left arm's done. Once it heals up, do the right arm. And from everybody I talked to that's had the surgery, you come back at 110%. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But that's not what this is about. I just wanted to bring it up because somebody was probably going to ask. This is the annual bourbon episode, my tour through the bourbons and whiskeys I've been checking out throughout the year. First up, and not the first time, my go-to throughout the year has been Bulleit Frontier Whiskey. Bulleit's interesting to me, not necessarily because of why I like it. I'll get to that. It's the fact that people, maybe some craft cocktail bartenders are trolling people, I'm not really sure, but I've had people try to correct me on the pronunciation of Tom Bulleit's last name. Tom Bulleit knows his own name, and there's plenty of videos. In fact, one of the top results you'll find if you were to Google how do you pronounce Bulleit, it's going to come up with an interview with Tom telling people it's pronounced just like the ammunition, Bulleit. And I guess some people think that just because there's an extra letter in it, that it's got to be pronounced differently or something. And I'm like, this is the English language where the word knife exists, starts with a K, and there's a silent G hiding in the word foreigner. So it's pronounced Bulleit, but moving past that, this is probably the only bourbon or whiskey I like that has even what I call a high rye content. It's a very smooth flavor that mixes well or goes neat or goes on ice, and it's just a very inexpensive alternative to something like Jack Daniel's or some of your other common well whiskeys. Some bars actually use this as a well whiskey, and I like those bars because it's an everyman and an everyday if you were to have a drink or two everyday kind of drink. And it's definitely something that if you haven't tried it, I would recommend checking out, and you might find that for the price, it's very hard to beat in this category. Throughout the year, I occasionally get gifted a bottle of bourbon or a bottle of whiskey. This Wyoming small batch bourbon whiskey is one of those such instances. If it's got a city name or a state name or something generic like that, I generally don't get my hopes up, but I was pleasantly surprised by, the taste. It's almost like a hybrid. And this is going to sound weird just based on amber color if you're really into color notating possible taste. It's got a flavor that's similar between like a hybrid between Jack Daniel's and a Basil Hayden. So it's almost got a sweet aftertaste to it. And it's really good, just neat. On ice, obviously, especially as the ice cubes start to melt, it definitely mellows the flavor out a little bit. But I was pleasantly surprised yesterday. I had my second bottle. Went through the first one over a couple months. Went ahead and hunted down, and very hard to find here in the South. And here in the South, apparently Jesus doesn't like us ordering alcohol on the internet, so we can't do that like some other states can. But I was able to hunt a second bottle down, and I'm taking my time going through it. For a 5-year, pretty hard to beat, especially for the price. If we're going on a scale of $0 to $100, 0 being you're drinking in an alley and you don't have a home, and $100 being you're either trying to impress somebody or you have a very specific flavor in mind, this is what I call a mid-range. You can find it between $30 and $50 depending where you go. I had to pay a little bit of a premium for it, I think, because it's a little bit more rare here in Georgia, but I was able to find it and I highly recommend it. Another bottle a student gifted me was this Smoke Wagon Bourbon, 92 proof. It has the word smoke in it, but getting into it clearly didn't mean what I thought it meant, meaning it was going to have like an oaky flavor to it or a smoky flavor to it. Not long ago, I tried a smoked old fashioned for the first time, and it's in my top 10 worst drink experiences ever for mixed craft cocktails, and I had to pay $13 for the privilege of not finishing my drink because it tasted so bad. If you're into that, that's cool. I just don't like having campfire in my mouth. So I was a little bit worried, but again, pleasantly surprised. This is still my first bottle, kind of working my way through it. Haven't tried to mix it with anything yet, but I really don't want to. I like the flavor a lot. It's got a little bit of a buttery, almost like that Highland Scotch flavor you get with some scotches where it hits you right at the beginning and then it kind of mellows out after that, or it gets peaty after that, depending on where you're going. For the price, this is definitely below your mid-range as far as cost goes, but don't let the price fool you. It's definitely worth the small investment, and it's a very small investment you're gonna have to make for this, and it's definitely worth it. I could easily see this becoming like the go-to, just no special occasion kind of drink that you just take on ice. Or if you're into it like I generally am, I usually just take a finger neat. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that. But you know what I mean if you know what I mean. Irish whiskey gets a bad rap, which I don't really understand. Generally, your Irish whiskeys, your most famous Irish whiskeys, are usually a well whiskey or something that you would order as a shot to ride along with your Pabst Blue Ribbon. And Tullamore DEW or Tullamore Dew is really no different. It's a very similar taste to Jameson, but it doesn't have, and this is just me, I would drink Jameson if it had been in a bottle that had been sitting in the sun, because I know what I'm getting into. Yeah, it's not going to be a great experience, but at least I know it's going to be consistent. Tullamore Dew is not something I would necessarily drink by itself. It's a very boring whiskey flavor when not mixed with something, but if I'm mixing with anything, I almost prefer this to be like the go-to. So if I'm going to do a whiskey sour or a whiskey and ginger, and most people, if they're really, well, let's just say, in my opinion, snobbish about what they would make a whiskey and ginger or Manhattan or something like that with, they probably wouldn't go with an Irish whiskey, and that's okay. I would, and I would go with this one. Some of you were probably waiting for my worst bourbon or whiskey experience of the year. I thought this was going to be it. This is the Burning Chair. It's made by a person who normally makes wine. It's an 88 proof, and it comes in a very artistic bottle, which the bottle is what got my attention, so the marketing definitely worked there, but I literally purchased it expecting it to be terrible, but I'm willing to take the risk. This is above a mid-range price. And where has this been all of my life? In my favorite bourbon whiskeys above the mid-range price, so $50 plus. You've got Blanton's, you've got Basil Hayden's, you've got Booker's. And for me, you now have the Burning Chair. I hope they don't stop making this. This is probably the first bourbon or whiskey I've tried as an attempt by a winemaker who actually seems to understand bourbon and or whiskey, and he's able to get it right. I think the wine market is just so flooded with people. A lot of guys trying to get into it now are like, oh, well, all the cute, kitschy names are taken and all the fun labels are taken and all the categories have been covered and there's nothing we can really do. So let's take our wine expertise and go make bourbon or whiskey. These guys actually got it right. So if you're looking for something that has a slightly different flavor, it doesn't taste barrel finished. It doesn't taste like they tried to get some kind of floral hints to it like some of the winemakers that came over to the bourbon and whiskey world did. It just tastes like that they took a unique process to it. It's got a really clean aftertaste that's not uncommonly like, I'd say, white whiskey, but it's not as astringent. It's a very mellow bourbon whiskey. So you got to be careful with it because before you know it, you're a third of the way through the bottle and the night just took a turn. If you want something that's smooth and relaxing, or you want something for, some kind of special occasion, get this. Not really sure how to pronounce this. It's Opadian. Again, the English language sometimes just gets things a little bit confused. I purchased this with high hopes because it's I thought I was getting into a Jefferson's Ocean situation because it says smoke and sea right there on the label. I was thinking it was done in much the same way that Jefferson's Ocean isn't. And it's not that. It's something different. And if you read the label, it makes it sound like it's going to be a very smooth, very inviting flavor. Hold on. I need to calm my nerves before I retell a traumatic experience. What fresh hell is this? If hell had a well whiskey, this would probably be it. Serving this to someone would be the equivalent of spitting in their food. It's terrible. I can't, and again, sometimes language fails me when I'm trying to really get the words to paint a very clear mental picture of my discomfort, distaste, and disdain for something that I've tried. I tried it, gave it a little sip neat. I'm like, okay, that was awful. Then I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll try it on some ice. Maybe that'll smooth things out. Somehow, the colder it is, the worse it is, which is unique because usually cold kind of for some people, or for some whiskeys or some bourbons, mellows things out. This is not the case. This should be illegal. It shouldn't be, it's not palatable. It's not something that should be allowed by any and all governing bodies that determine what kind of foods are safe for public consumption, what kind of alcohols are safe for public consumption. This might be good for cleaning barnacles off the bottom of a ship, or, you know, in a pinch, you could use it as a rough fuel source, post-apocalyptic type of thing. I was actually thinking about, for those of you who are familiar with the game Fallout, and I think like this would probably be something that would be served in a bar in a post-apocalyptic hell, and even then it would still be a joke played on some unsuspecting person that upset the mutant bartender. So yeah, don't buy this ever. If you see it, just walk the other way, or do everyone a favor, and if you see it in your favorite liquor store, hide it so no one buys it. So that has been the annual bourbon episode. Going on 7 years now. Pretty good run. This one a little bit closer to Christmas than a couple years past, but just going on with the things that have been going on, I try to get it out to you guys as soon as possible. And I had to make a couple, well, just one last minute purchase because I wanted to have something else to tell you guys about, and that was actually the burning chair. I bought it and didn't have time to try it and thought it was going to be terrible, and then it wasn't. In fact, it was awesome. So if I'm going to recommend you guys run out and get anything, if you're familiar with the other stuff, that's going to keep. This might be something that they just stop making because they move on. I don't know. But this one, out of all of them, and if you're not familiar, of course, Bulleit, go to. Some of the other ones I talked about. Good mixing, the Tullamore do. Wyoming is good. Smoke Wagon is good. But out of all of them we talked about in this year's video, the Burning Chair is definitely one to check out. I'm Eric Count with Sage Dynamics. Whiskey, bourbon accordingly.